I began to create, to build up my Christian identity from zero, because my family was atheists, they didn't materialists, they didn't believe in nothing. I'm on the side of tradition, and I'm against the modernity, against Western hegemony, against the modern West. I wasn't absolutely satisfied with the explanation that my material world is everything and I'm just the reflection of it. I've started with the experience, a radical experience of the soul. So my soul is something much more. All sacred traditions agree in that. So the interiority is much more important than exteriority, and that we need to concentrate on the inner aspect of ourself, but as well how to interpret correctly some forgotten aspect of traditional spirituality, and the conservative revolutionary authors like Schmidt, Heidegger, Corbin, who tried to restore the sacredness lost in the Western modernity. That's discovered for me not only Iranian and Islamic esotericism, but as well many other things. I am indebted to Henri Corbin. I have totally rejected all kind of political theories of Western modernity, and that was the kind of opening the path, the way to rehabilitate, to rediscover and reaffirm pre-modern or not Western form of political thought. There are systems of political thought based on traditional sacred metaphysics outside of the Western modernity, and that is great discovery. That is why I'm in favor of Vilayat al-Faqih. And I'm a great admirer of Shia political constitution and organization, because for me there's a spiritual poem. It is everything for us. Dostoevsky is for us a kind of, you have correctly said, a kind of icon, the Russian hood in general sense. I've studied American civilization, not giving the criticism. I've tried to understand their way of thinking, as I would be American. Recently, we have established a high political school and Russian humanitarian university. The Western thought has penetrated so deep in us that we don't remark that. If we try to make kind of cleansing, intellectual cleansing of the Western ideas, we should reject capitalism as the ideology based on the growth of the material comfort. That is wrong. That is illusion. That is not reached. Capitalism is the negation of the spiritual meaning of economy, and immediately it becomes the tool of total perversion. So if we say, oh, there is secular aspect of life, there are sacred, no, everything should be sacred. So religion should be not only restored as the part of society, it should penetrate all the aspects of our life. We are united with the Muslims on a deeper way than just political pragmatism, because we share the same sacred attitude. We share the traditional family's sacred values. God is not just some transcendental reason or cause of the reality, but God is present in the reality. He is more than reality, but he is not less than reality. That is important. And Sufi tradition affirms this possibility to discover the God inside of the reality. The God is here.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نرحب بكم في سلسلة حوارات فكرية ومعرفية على قناة حيرة. Today we are interviewing Professor Alexander Dugin, who is a Russian thinker, author, and a political philosopher. He's talking to us from Moscow. He was the head of the Department of Sociology of International Relations at Moscow State University. He also served as chief editor of the pro-Kremlin Christian Orthodox channel Sargar TV. He speaks Italian, German, French, English, and Spanish. He's the author of many books, such as The Great Awakening versus The Great Reset, Political Platonism, Ethnos and Society, Ethno-Sociology, Martin Heidegger, The Philosophy of Another Beginning, Last War of the World Island, The Geopolitics of Contemporary Russia, Putin versus Putin, The Rise of the Fourth Political Theory. So, welcome, Professor. It's an honor having you with us today.
Thank you very much for your invitation.
In the beginning, we'd like to hear more about yourself. So just give us a summary about your journey in ideas, theories, philosophical thought, the stages of your life, the books you worked on, the goals or the main ideas that captured your life and your projects. So in the beginning, just give us a summary about Dugin, the human being, and his theoretical engagement.
So first of all, I was born in 62 in a typical Russian family with mother medicine and a father military man. But I started from from early youth to explore something very unusual in Russia, traditionalism. So I was born and raised up in the atheistic materialist society, and I refused that from my early youth. So I was in favor of the spiritual tradition, of the sacred, of the religion, in spite of the ambience, not thanks to the ambience. So I have encountered in my youth some very unusual people, spiritualists, metaphysicians, Kedak Jamal, Islamic philosopher, great Islamic philosopher, Eugene Golovin, a great specialist in the Middle Ages and art and the culture, and many, few others.
Rani Guinon, for example, I read that you're influenced by him.
Yeah, they were the key elements in my formation of my world vision. So they have introduced to me or my reneging on traditionalism, perennialism, Julius Evola, and many other authors. So from that moment, I was formed as traditionalist. So what is traditionalism? That is the idea that modernity and the Western modernity, because the modernity is something Western, is totally wrong, is based on the reversal of the traditional values. So we need to stay true to the tradition and to fight against the modernity. That I didn't change this attitude during all my life. So when from the end of the 70s and the early 80s, I was totally formed as traditionalist. So I've started to study many authors, many schools, many philosophers, languages, and my education was mostly self-education in the radical contradiction to the society where I was born and where I lived. So, and it is still here because I consider myself traditionalist. But after having knowledge of traditionalism and tradition of Islam, of Christianity, I was baptized in the early childhood in the Christian Orthodox Church, so I was Christian Orthodox, but that wasn't tradition of my family. That was totally restored. So I began to form, to create, to build up my Christian identity from zero, from minus, because my family was atheists, they didn't materialists, they didn't believe in and nothing. And that was against everybody around me. So that was the consciously building religious Christian Orthodox identity based on the presumption that tradition is right and modernity and West are wrong totally. That was, and I still have the same opinion. So I'm on the side of tradition, and I'm against the modernity, against Western hegemony, against the modern West. Maybe in the Middle Ages and before the modernity, the West had some very positive elements in sacred traditions, mystical tradition, Christian religion, but it has totally lost that with the Protestant Reformation. That was desacralization of Christianity, Western Christianity, and after that, fall of total collapse and degeneration of the Western society. But I didn't stop fixing that, as many traditions do. I try to apply the traditionalism, the principles of tradition, of the sacredness, to the society that was around me. So I've started to find some elements in the main culture, in the art, in the philosophy, in the politics, and the geopolitics, and international relations, and the sociology and anthropology that would be on our side of this global fight between the God and the devil, between the sacredness and the profanity. And I have identified many interesting aspects in the so-called profane, modern, mostly Western culture, as well in the Russian tradition, in philosophical tradition. So I try to resemble, to gather together, to put together different elements that could serve as tools, as weapons against modernity, not to just to declare that modernity is wrong. If we have something wrong, false, we need to fight that to establish the truth. That is my activist opinion. So I am engaged metaphysicist. So I could not just say, oh, that is wrong, I prefer tradition, I escape from the modernity. It's impossible. We could escape modernity only if we win modernity, if we oblige modernity to follow the good path of God and not the wrong path of devil. That is my opinion. So I started to apply these metaphysical principles to the concrete politics, and that coincided with the end of the Soviet Union. So the old atheist materialist structure has fallen, and new, much worse to say the truth, liberal Western society began to be established in Russia. So I was against communism because that was atheist, materialist, but with much more fever, much more power. I started being already mature thinker to fight against liberalism in Russia, and that was the moment in the 90s. I started to write many books on traditionalism, on the philosophy, on the politics. And when Putin came to power, that was, in my opinion, the very positive change. So Putin started to get out from the dependence of the West, started to reduce the influence of the postmodern Western degenerative culture, and he was much more open to the tradition. So I supported him, and during 2000, I have developed a kind of summary of my attitude. So first of all, forced political theory. That is very important. That is many consider that it is my main work. I don't know. I don't think so, but it is really important because I I have provided, I have developed the radical criticism of three modern political theories of the Western modernity. So liberalism, first of all, and that is main enemy because it is everywhere. So it's worse than everything else, but the main problem is liberalism that exists, it is attacking, it is active, it is hegemonic, it tries to impose on everybody its hegemony. So that was mostly anti-liberal idea. But the fourth political theory is the idea that we shouldn't oppose to liberalism the other Western modern theories, as well materialist, as well atheist as communism and fascism. And the criticism of communism and nationalism, Western communism, Western nationalism, that is the other part of the fourth political theory. So why fourth? Because it is against liberalism, and that is essential, but as well, it is not, absolutely not communism, fascism, nationalism, socialism, and something between them. So I have totally rejected all kind of political theories of Western modernity, and that was the kind of opening the path, the way to rehabilitate, to rediscover and reaffirm pre-modern or not Western form of political thought. For example, caliphate in the Islamic tradition, or other Shia political theory. That is why my Iranian friend, they consider Vilayat Faqih precisely as fourth political theory of Shia world. But in our case, that would be Orthodox Christian monarchy, or for example, Confucianism version for China, Indian caste society for Vedantic tradition of India, and rehabilitation of all kind of non-modern, non-Western kind of politics. They are totally mocked at, totally destroyed, rejected by Western colonial way of thinking. So, and I advocated all kind of a liberal, not Western, not modern, maybe Western, but not modern form of political thought. And that is the kind, a great treasury. It is not just some confused element. There are systems of political thought based on traditional sacred metaphysics outside of the Western modernity. And that is great discovery. So we shouldn't reduce our fight against liberalism, or we shouldn't consider liberalism universal, but we shouldn't reduce our fight against liberalism to just communism or nationalism. So we have much more potential into political traditions, theories. For example, in the West itself, Platonic vision, Aristotelian tradition, Christian Middle Age, and political vision of Christian empire. So we have a great amount of political theories, generally called by myself as the types of fourth political theory. Fourth political theory is not just one plus one, 3 plus 1. That is something other. That's a generic term for the huge amount of very different political tendency. The common point, common feature is they reject, they are created outside of political modernity. They despise liberal approach, they put them apart, and they freely develop their own our tradition. If, for example, there will be no in such tradition no democracy, no problem. If you don't want democracy, there is nothing universal in the Western modern liberal tradition. So maybe if you want to have democracy, please, no problem. So everything should be regarded as independent, free. And from that, I came to multipolarity. Multipolarity is application of fourth political theory to the international structure, and that is now embodied in the BRICS. BRICS now, that is the formal manifestation of my approach, because if we discard, if we reject political modernity as something universal, something obligatory. We are free to establish the different civilizations. For example, Islamic civilization, Russian Christian Orthodox civilization, Chinese, Indian, African, Latin American. So we are totally free to make to create a kind of new kind of political societies, the system, and without any regard the cries of political correctness, cancel culture, of liberalism. So they are just a part of humanity. They pretend to be the whole humanity, but they are just the region, just the province of the humanity. That is satanic proud to declare themselves the whole humanity. They are just the province, and they are free to have LGBT parades, to create their own kind of perverted civilization. There's clearly the civilization of Satan, but first of all, we need to put them at their place. That is perverted anti-civilization that could be the part of the paths of the humanity, but they are in nothing all humanity. So the rest is much more and much important and traditional than the West. So I'm on the part of the rest against the West. And multipolarity is now something that is real, that we could feel, that we could touch. The next point, very important, I think, it is my 24 volumes great work on Noumachia, where I'm studying the different civilizations in depth. So when I started, I have developed the method to study civilization, one civilization, without projecting on it our own opinion. So I'm not, for example, I've tried to explore Islamic civilization, forgetting that I'm Christian Orthodox. I don't want to make criticism or improve, so-called improve Islamic teaching by Christian. So I studied Islamic civilization as if I would be Muslim. So I've studied Indian civilization not as Christian Orthodox, neither Islamic, as if I would be Vedantist, Hindu. I studied Chinese civilization as if I would be Taoist, Confucianist, or Buddhist, like them. And more than that, I've studied American civilization, not giving the criticism. I've tried to understand their way of thinking as I would be American. So that is my method of empathy, to regard the civilization from inside, not from outside, not to project, in my opinion, our own civilization attitudes. And that is 24, the huge series of books dedicated to all existing civilization, ancient and modern. And obviously 3 volumes, the big volumes, are dedicated to Russian civilizations, but to all civilizations something belongs, some work, some books. So that is more or less my points of interest. As well, I have established geopolitical school in Russia. I have many writings on Eurasianism as Russian civilization. That is not just Slavic, not just ethnically Slavic and Russian, but and Christian, but includes as well the other cultures. So that is inner multipolarity of Russian civilization. I was very interested in sociology, and I have written some books on ethnosociology, sociology of imagination, and I've studied philosophy, Martin Heidegger, Hegel, and Carl Schmitt, and other Russian philosophy, Florensky, Bulgakov. So I have all my life I worked on that. And I've tried to put my ideas in the practice, trying to influence the political situation in Russia. So I have dedicated one big book to the idea of empire, spiritual idea of empire, generally in all its versions, from the ancient Babylonia up to American so-called or Anglo-Saxon pseudo false empires. But that is as well a part of my teaching. And now recently we have established a high political school and Russian humanitarian university, and I'm chief director of this school, where we try to revise, make a big revision of humanitarian and social sciences in modern Russia, to put them in harmony with traditional values. So that, I think, that is the main mission now. So to make revision and to correctly and with details to separate toxic Western liberal influence in social and humanitarian science, and to reaffirm and reinforce the traditional values and the traditional aspect of Russian independent sovereign thought. That is more or less so.
A very interesting introduction, and hoping you all success in your other or incoming projects. So I have many questions in my mind. I'd like to ask you about your fourth political theory and about the Russian model as an civilized alternative to the West and other things. But let me start from the traditionalist school and personally. So what did you find, and let the answers be a bit short so we can cover different questions. What did you personally find or found interesting and fascinating in the traditional school and its spiritual, ethical, virtuous, Sufi, or the esoteric meanings of life, and which kind of religion and relation to God and ethics you believe in or you practice? I'd like to know your personal involvement in the spiritual and religious side.
So first of all, because I was born and raised up in the atheist society, materialist society, the starting point was a kind of blind rejection of this externalist attitude. So I wasn't absolutely satisfied with the explanation that my material world is everything and I'm just the reflection of it. I felt a deep autonomy and sovereignty of the soul. So I've started with the experience, a radical experience of the soul. So my soul is something much more serious, much more autonomous and sovereign than it was pretended by a dominating culture. So that was the rejection of materialism and atheism. That was the beginning of that, and step by step, I discovered the authors who defended the same position. So traditionalists were more radical critics of this atheism and externalism, and I followed their path. I have discovered Christian mysticism, the theory of the independence of the soul and the necessity of the soul to elevate by the stairway to the contemplation of God and angels. So the heaven are much more real than the earth in that aspect. And the same idea Sufi tradition or Shia tradition affirms. So and mystical tradition of the India, and as well Confucianism and Taoism. So all sacred traditions agree in that. So the interiority is much more important than exteriority, and that we need to concentrate on the inner aspect of ourself and try to find the origin of thinking soul, intellectual soul in God. And so that following the steps and degrees of this exploration of the interior landscape of human soul, we could arrive to the correct and sane conclusions about the structure of the worlds, including in the small things. So that is why Quran, for example, Quran dedicate attention to small things of the everyday lives. For camels, for example, for some habits. There is no details in the God's creation. So that is very important to have the totally spiritual, totally sacred world vision. And I studied that in different traditions. First of all, in my own Christian Orthodox tradition, and monks tradition, the starets, elders traditions. But as well, I searched as well kind of common elements, common features, the similarities with Sufi tradition, with different other tradition, following Guénon, Evola, and other traditionalists, and making my own original studies in that way that mostly confirmed the position with some details, confirmed position of Guénon.
What important dimensions you found in the Sufi or in the Shi'i tradition, especially spiritually, or in terms of the relation of God, or belief in the day after, or even in the virtuous life, or especially in Shi'i and Sufi tradition, if you found something special?
So I am admirer of Sufism in generally. So I'm admirer of the idea that God is not just some transcendental reason or cause of the reality, but God is present in the reality. He is more than reality, but he is not less than reality. That is important. And Sufi tradition affirms this possibility to discover the God inside of the reality. The God is here. He is there, but he is not only there. He is not just some transcendental being, because he is transcendental as well as immanent. So I interpret that way ideas of Wahdat al-Wujud, of Ibn Arabi, and idea of Qutb, of the pole. So that is the kind of spiritual concentration of spiritual presence. And in the case of the Russian Orthodox elders, the starets, we consider them to be something more than human. They have a spiritual presence that we can't receive and transmit. So that is tradition of the immanent sacredness of the God. That is obviously more than reality, universe, much more incompatible, but it is not less. That is important. So it is not just abstract idea. He is working. He is living being. He is here, and he loves man, and he suffers when we still continue to be idiots and fools, and we turn from him to some mundane ways. He has tears in his eyes when we behave as the animals. We the creations of him, the special and precious Adamic creations. So, and this pain of the God, when we don't follow his ways, that is very important feeling. So the pain of the God feels. So I think that is spiritual excess of the Sufism, and I think that as well in the Shia tradition, the main more important is the Imam tradition. So the continuation of the sacredness among holy Imam, and the hiding of the last Imam. So that is a beautiful idea, that choosing God man is inside of the world and outside. He is hidden, but he is here. So that is very important. So that is an illustration of where the divinity is. So is in here, but out, not here. There, but not there. So he should be present, but he is in hiding and occultation. So I think that all the Shia mysticism centered on rediscovering this communication with the hidden one and awaiting of his return, his manifestation at the end of the time in the Zuhur moment. That is the great idea. So that is correspond to the second advent of the Jesus Christ in our tradition. So we could discover many similar aspects. They are not identical. So nothing like that. So every tradition, every religion, any religion has its own way to explain the relations to the divinity, and we shouldn't mix and confuse them. But we are free to mark.
The doctrine of Imam and the hidden Imam, the 12th Imam in the Shia, and the Shi'i doctrine is an interesting and a persuasive doctrine which shows the relation between us and God with this intermediary point, and also the hope of justice that will come at the end of this life that we're living. Is it true?
Yes, that I think that is the greatest idea and the greatest truth about. So and all the imamology of Shia tradition is very deep and very spiritual. And Haidar Amoli, for example, the idea of inner imams, inner prophets, and in the human beings. So that idea of the mystic of light, the light that transforms, the light of imamat that transforms the believers. So that is in some way, in some aspects, it is close and similar to Sufi tradition, but with different elements. What is the Nuri Muhammad, the light of the Muhammad and the Sufi? That is the imamat, sacred imams in Shia. There are some divergences between these attitudes, but there is the main common denominator of the radical interiority and spirituality, batiniya. We could apply the example of these batiniya in the Christian religion, because the Christian mysticism, and most of all Orthodox Saint Denis of the Areopagite, and many other, the Simeon, theologian, and many others. So I think that is what is most important, is batiniya in all the tradition, because in Islam, in Christianity, in Hinduism, in Chinese tradition. So if we have the kind of experience of what batiniya is, we could discover and identify that in different traditions. If we have not this experience, it's just formal description that couldn't catch the real nature of the reality we are speaking of.
And also I have a scholar who's comparing between the Christian Orthodox mystical tradition with the Islamic Shi'i tradition. He took two scholars from here and there. I guess the Thelicolia, it's a book of spirituality, and he compared it with Sayyid Bahr al-Ulum's spiritual states towards God. It was interesting, and the work of comparison and comparing is always interesting between traditions, as you say. So, Professor, before we switch to politics in our second part, let us just complete other ideas about spirituality and religion. So you started from the Orthodox Christian thought, but then you opened and read widely. You opened your horizons through all different traditions and religions, especially the spiritual and the batini and the esoteric side of religions. And you have now this global vision, so you're not limited to a certain kind of religion. You have this very deep philosophical understanding of God and the cosmic view that you believe in, and the spirituality, the ethics that you embody. This is true, and maybe this is why you studied Heidegger later on, and then you combined your ideas with the existential German thought with Heidegger and others.
So I would say that a little bit. I would put all that a little bit differently. I started with traditionalism and abstraction. So I started with Guénon. I started with the point of transcendental unity of religions or traditions, transcendental unity of traditions. That was one of the theses of the Guénon, and because I observed that you cannot practice as just abstract traditionalism. So you need to have your own way to the sacredness. So I have returned to my religion of the childhood. That so to baptism, to the mystery of the Christian Orthodox Church. That was just not. I didn't start with Christianity enlarging my horizon. I started with abstract traditionalism and the broadest horizon, that included all kind of sacredness, in order to concretize and to make concrete my spiritual appartenance to the sacred tradition. And that was my native Orthodox Christianity, where I discovered all kind of spiritual treasures. So the treasures. So nothing I lacked in the Christian tradition, and that was the kind of concretization of my spiritual experience, because you could not have just traditional spiritual experience. You need to belong, and Guénon affirmed that, to some concrete tradition. So you could not say, "Oh, I am everything: Buddhist, Sufi, Taoist, Christian." No, you should be what you are.
A certain path that you're convinced of, and you've read also Henry Corbin and his esoteric and ideas.
Absolutely, absolutely. I am a great admirer of Corbin. I have translated some of books of him. So and he was as well the disciple of Heidegger. So interesting. So he was Protestant, mystical Protestant. He was Heideggerian, but at the same time, he is the best knower and best searcher and specialist in the Islamic esoteric tradition. So I admire Corbin, and philosophy for me was the kind of instrument. So how to make kind of transmission to the larger part of the society of the spiritual truths, but as well how to interpret correctly some forgotten aspect of traditional spirituality, and the conservative revolutionary authors like Schmidt, Heidegger, Corbin, who tried to restore the sacredness lost in the Western modernity. They were very important orientations for that. So they are the bridges. So with them we could organize the perpetual and permanent communication between more or less profane society and the sacredness. So they serve as the channels of mutual understanding, and they give us the tools to understand better the deep degeneration of the modern Western culture, because they criticize them from inside. They know better than us how horrible is Western modernity, and they show us, Heidegger, Schmidt, the abyss of the satanic fall of the Western modern technocentric anti-human perverted civilization, and we could with their help to understand, to refresh our spiritual and metaphysical.
Professor, what about the Russian novels, Dostoevsky and other great Russian novels and literature?
Dostoevsky, absolutely. Dostoevsky was one of the main traditionalist and Slavophile thinkers. So he was not just a writer; he was a philosopher and great thinker. And for us, Russian traditionalists, he is the main authority, I would say. And he had so deep understanding of Christianity, of the faith. So that is much more than a kind of just superficial modern theology. He lived through the Christianity, and that was a precious experience that he shared with us. So Dostoevsky and the other authors, for example, Florensky, Bulgakov, who influenced, by the way, Corben. Corben was started his teaching and studies with Bulgakov, who was in Sorbonne. And Bulgakov, it is one of the greatest philosophers, spiritual, mystical philosophers, sophiology. That is, and Corben, when he speaks about the beautiful girl Nizam that has met Ibn Arabi in Jerusalem, in the Mecca, he uses the term of Sophia. Sophia, that is the center of Russian religious philosophy. That is very, very important. So, the sophiology. And the last text of Corben called "The Fight for the Sophia," the fight, the war, the battle for the Sophia. That is very, very symbolic, I think. And Corben started to learn Russian and made some translations. So everything is intercommunicated. Corben was influenced by Heidegger, by Bulgakov, Russian philosopher, and by Guénon as well. He was traditionalist. He was very great, and he discovered for me not only Iranian and Islamic esotericism, but as well many other things. I am indebted to Andrei Corben.
I'd like to ask you more about a novel writer like Dostoevsky and his influence in the Russian society. Is he now considered an icon, a symbol, a person who people learn from? And his main idea, in your opinion, what is it? Is he presenting the coming back to our identities, the deep spiritual personality, the personality which overcomes the difficulties? What's so special in him that that made him an icon or a symbol for the Russian society?
First of all, he understood better than any other the depth of Russian soul, the paradox. So that was a real Christian, total Christian writer in the time of the atheism, materialism already penetrating in the Russian society. He was the kind of example of the real Russian thought. So Dostoevsky, it is not just individual. We consider him to be the symbol of us. He is example of the very, very tormented and very, very paradoxical Russian soul that doesn't want to flee from the pain, from the contradictions, that accept not only the better side of human being, but as well is open to see and recognize the dark side of human existence and to overcome it. So not to avoid, but to get through. So that is it is everything for us. Dostoevsky is for us a kind of, you have correctly said, a kind of icon, a Russian hood in general sense. So there is the kind of cult common almost for all our society except the Westerners, because Westerners hate him, so liberals hate him, and or everybody in Russia who is not liberal or neither liberal nor Westerner, they have a kind of cult of Dostoevsky.
Professor, in your opinion, the role of religion, spirituality, mysticism in society, in Russian society or in modern societies, what do you believe in this point? Where should the role of religion be in our modern secular world? Because also Russia in a way or another, it is a modern secular society. So do you believe that universities, societies, teenagers, people should go back and religion will revive them in terms of their social activity, in terms of their ethics, in terms of their family values, and in all aspects, even in economics? So do you believe that religion should go back and revive our societies, especially in the form that you presented it, the sacredness, the spirituality, the deep aspects and such?
Yes, I think so. I'm convinced that it is so. So the religion should be back, but not just only formal also, but the main idea is the spiritual revival of the society. And it is not just return to the past. Because when we say that religion is just the social institution that belongs to the past, that is totally wrong, because the God is eternal. Eternal, it is not belonging to the past. Eternal, that means that he is now. He is living now, and he will live in the future. He will be in the future. Eternity, it is not about past. Eternity, it is about the permanent presence on something more than human, more than real, more than natural in the world, everywhere. So if we say, oh, there is secular aspect of life, there are sacred, no. Everything should be sacred. So religion should be not only restored as the part of society, it should penetrate all the aspects of our life, because otherwise that will be devil who will occupy the so-called free space. No free space for outside of God. Every detail, economy, politics, education, youth, old people, families, children, everybody should be put inside of the presence of God. And that should be recognized, that should be transmitted and translated through social institutions of all kinds, starting from the elements of behavior. So either you behave yourself as a God creature, or you will be possessed by the demon. So there is no neutrality. And the Iranian thought know that better than any other. So if you are not on the side of the God, you are not in the neutrality, just human, just material things. There are no material things. The material things are camp of the battle between the light and the shadow and the darkness. So everything is penetrated by these contradictory elements. And if we say, oh no, let us take something, for example, small elements, economy of the society, secondary, from the God, and let it be considered to be something natural, something natural, not religion. That means that we give the economy to the devil. And that is precisely what happens with capitalism. Capitalism is the negation of the spiritual meaning of economy, and immediately it becomes the tool of total perversion. Capitalism is not only godless, but is satanic creation of the Western modernity. If you agree that everything has the price in the world, you're under influence of the darkness, and the Lord of darkness possesses you. So, and that is why so important to return or just appeal, not return, appeal to the Islamic economy. Maybe Islamic economy, it is not the past. Maybe it didn't exist, but it should exist. So that is important, based on Quranic prescriptions and Sunnah and traditions in the Shia world, Shia tradition. We need to organize, that is duty. We need to organize our economy on the spiritual basis. Maybe it was not so. Maybe it is not so. It is imperative. That should be done. It is for the future. It is the task. It is our goal. So not regardless that was so or no. So no problem. In the past, we should take the elements and the seeds of eternity distributed in the past. And if we find them, if we identify the seeds of the eternity, that is eternal, that is not just something that belongs to the past. So we need to think in the terms of eternity, and we need to apply eternity to every smallest detail of our society. That is why I'm in favor of Vilayati Faqih, and I'm a great admirer of Shia political constitution and organization, because for me there's a spiritual point. If you have this organ of spiritual meaning of the reforms as at the top, that is totally right. So every Iranian who has received such a gift as Vilayat Faqih, political system, shouldn't protest. That is a kind of devil possession. So you have the treasury, you have this political system. Maybe it is not perfect, not because it is centered on God, but because it's not enough. Centered on God, not enough. So maybe some Iranian politicians, administrators, don't take seriously Vilayat Faqih. They say, oh, just form, just external form. No, you should leave that. You should, everyday life, you should not only formally follow the precepts of great Allah Khamenei, you should leave them, you should understand them, you should interpret in your experience. That's so Iran, modern days Iran, is the mystical political system that maybe lacks something, but not as liberal critics pretend. That is not spiritual enough. It is not too spiritual. It's not spiritual enough. The same and much more. There's much more reasons we could apply to Russia. Russia coming now to traditional.
I'll come to Russia. I'll ask you about Russia, but interesting that you mentioned about Iran. So what you find very interesting in the system of the Islamic Revolution in Iran, so it's 45 years now, and especially this political system is based on the idea and theology of Wilayat al-Faqih and the leader, which is an Islamic, just spiritual leader that should be on the top. So in your thought as a political philosopher, you feel that this theory has great roots in the sacred and the spiritual understanding of society, and it's a gift to any society. So in Iran, it came in the form of Wilayat al-Faqih, which is related to the Shia doctrine. So please elaborate more on your interest and understanding and deep understanding of Wilayat al-Faqih as an idea. And Iran as an example that's facing the West and capitalism from 45 years until now.
So first of all, it is a return from the westernized Shah system to the real Iranian independent sovereign system, and not only just formal independence from the West, but that is important in the Vilayat Faqih. That is opposition to Western modernity, not only on the geopolitical level, by spiritually, religiously. So Vilayat Faqih's tradition is based on the recognition of only one spiritual truth. There is no two truths, the spiritual, religion, and the human. There is only one. So the God is one, and nobody can oppose to God some political, social organization. Vilayat Faqih is the rule of God through competent experts in God, first of all, in the religion, in the Quran, in the tradition. So interpretation of tradition is most important. And precisely these philosophers, as in Plato, philosophers should rule. Iran vilayati faqih tradition and system, political system, is the kind of Plato state where the philosophers rule, and they're not considered to be just contemplative a state, a class. No, they are not just contemplative. To be contemplative, it is to approach the truth, the God, and to receive from contemplation of the truth some concrete ways to how to make political society and the country, how elevate them, how to bring country and society and the people in harmony with the eternal laws. And that is vilayati faqih. So I am a great admirer. I don't think that Sunni society or the other Islamic society now find correct analog of that. So I believe that vilayati faqih is reduced to Shia. Ayatollah Khamenei thought that it could be as well imitated in the Sunni, but we see that that is not the case. And I suggest to the Sunni world to search inspiration in Sufi tradition. So Qutb should rule. So maybe not indirectly, but the spiritual expert, the contemplative leader should as well should be a kind of main point of taking decisions, most important decisions. So the most important decisions in the organization of the social and political life of the society of the people should be based on the eternal principles and in the living experience of God by the chosen people. So I think that the Sufi empire or Sufi caliphate and hidden caliphate has existed in Central Asia with some Sufi tradition of Sirhindi, Indian Sufi. So that we should rethink the concept of how organize correctly revival of Islamic politics. I think the Salafi and Wahhabi and radical Islam, that was the failure. That was too formal. That because it lacked the interiority, that lacked inner batiniya. Salafi are totally against batiniya, against the spiritual dimension, and that is why their legitimate fight against the West and the modernity it is destined to be the failure because they lack that positive spiritual richness of the Islamic thought.
Interesting, Professor. Let us go now to Russia and the realms of Russia. But before that, let us connect it with Iran. So you talked about Iran and its example and revolution. Now, can we say that also Russia gained lessons and learned also from Iran in terms of standing against the West and the imperialism and the capitalist values of the West and standing against this power? Is there common things that the Russian model learned from Iran, because the Russian model came strong and in power in the last 2 decades, maybe more. So do you believe in this? And then I'll ask you about the model that Russia is trying to present and where it's reaching, and yeah.
So I wouldn't say that Iran has influenced, to say the truth, the political leadership of Russia, but I could confess that Iran has influenced myself. And that is not unimportant. So I am under influence of the Iranian tradition, and I'm a great admirer of Ayatollah Khamenei and vilayati faqih and the heroic position of Iran fighting against the West, preserving and restoring the spiritual identity of Iranian society. So I'm a great admirer of Iranian civilizations, of the Shia and of modern communist Iran, it effectively has influenced myself. But I don't think that there are many people in the leadership of Russia that are as well influenced as myself. So maybe I am a kind of.
So, Professor, talking about Russia, you criticized the Western model and the capitalist model. So, especially in your theory, the fourth political theory, which kind of alternative you're presenting now, and especially for your country, Russia? Because let us talk first culturally, and then economically, and then politically, because many thinkers, they say that Russia is also another capitalist society who's fighting and struggling with the West because of the political interests and because of the economic interests, and the Middle East became weak, so they found a gap, and they are filling this gap to become strong strategically, politically, economically, but they are not presenting a soft power or another model or a civilized message to present for the world. So there nothing's to be shown here. So first of all, what do you think theoretically, and then practically where Russia is going and presenting?
So that is true. That analysis is true. That modern days Russia and Russia recent years was until now something like that. That was the part of global capitalist West fighting to preserve and to affirm its sovereignty against hegemonic will of the West to submit and to control and to conquer and colonize Russia. So that was just a kind of right inside of the same system. So that the part of the same globalist, capitalist, Western, modern, technocentric system revolted against the metropolis. And that started like that, with the political realism, and the sovereignty was the main, the only value. But entering in a radical contradiction with the Western civilization, step by step, Russia began to discover civilizational dimension of this fight. So we started to return to traditional values. And 1 year ago, Mr. Putin has signed the decree of the state defense of traditional values. So that was the great step in the direction of Iran. So traditional values are considered to be very important, and that made, and among these traditional values, another very important feature, there is a kind of prevailing of the spirit over matter. So the idea and the spirit is put over the matter. So that is anti-materialism. Among other traditional values, Putin signed a kind of theological decree that spirit is more important than matter. So that is a kind of a rupture and a break with the materialist tradition, communist and liberal. So that is the step out of the modernity. So I think that is culturally. Culturally, Russia is returning or restoring traditional values. It's just the first stage, but it is very important because now
family values and being against the homosexuality and other issues.
Yes. In Constitution now, the law prohibiting LGBT formally and the other form of cultural liberalism, postmodern destruction of the family, all that is the part of the law. That is important. So Russia is declared to be special civilization. Putin says openly, Russia is not country, is civilization. And it is the civilization in a war with the Western satanic civilization. That is more and more, we're approaching more and more Iranian positions. So we consider our civilization sacred, based on traditional values. We identify Western civilization as satanic, and that is why we are fighting. It's not just that started as riot in the same system, but it became something much more, the kind of re-emergence of Russian civilizational identity against Western civilization. And economically, we are still in the old situation. We are a capitalist country, but the state plays more and more important role in this capitalism. So that is not capitalism that dictates to state what to do, but it's just authoritative Putin state that dictate to the business what to do. So it is not the capitalism. It is state as something more important. That is a different situation. And politically, I think that we have formally liberal democracy, but is totally controlled by Putin. So that is Tsarist system. And I think we are approaching step by step to the moment when we should put together all these elements and declare a kind of new ideology that Russia is traditional spiritual empire, totally different from the West civilization, with special political organization and not capitalist and special Russian economy. And in that moment, we will obtain soft power dimension that will act now. But it is going that way. Maybe it didn't yet achieve the point of no return, but I think personally, I consider the changes in Russia now after the beginning of the fight in Ukraine as irreversible. So I am absolutely sure.
You're going towards this model, but gradually, you mean?
Absolutely.
And in terms of rights, minority rights and Muslim rights, so we can see in Dagestan or in Shishan that the Muslim minorities in Russia, they are capable of all the rights and they have their freedom and the freedom of religion and all these stuff. So this can be also counted for the Russian model in encountering them and in treating them.
Absolutely, because they are not just minorities, they are organic part of our empire, of our Eurasian civilization. And what unites us Christians with Muslims, we Christians and Muslims, we share traditional values. For example, we defend family, we defend sacredness, we defend the fight against the Dajjal and Antichrist of the West. So there are so many not only just pragmatic, but organic, spiritual links, ties that unite us and Muslims, that we don't just tolerate the minority. They are not minorities. They are organic part of our society as us. So, and we are united with the Muslims on a deeper way than just political pragmatism, because we share the same sacred attitude, we share the traditional family's sacred values, and we have the common enemy in the presence of the West. So we are, for example, Islamic regions are much more against liberalization, postmodern cultures. They were first to reject homosexuality, LGBT, and now all our society is united in that. So we are united on the deeper level. They are not just tolerated minority, as they are active and organic part of our new revival.
Professor, if we go back to the relation between Russia and Iran, which kind of strategic relation is now happening? Because Russia has relations with many countries in the world, many countries in the Middle East, for example, the Gulf countries, other Arabic countries. So is there a special tie and relation between Iran and Russia, and especially in the Syrian war?
There is growing alliance between Russia and Iran, and our strategical partnership is developing and on the field of the Syria. In Iraq, we share the same, more or less the same attitude against the presence of American forces on the ground. So we have many common points in strategy, in economy, in military industry, but I think the most important is the growing ties between us and Iran in the field of spirituality and the dialogue of civilization. So we finally discover step by step the meaning of the revolution of Imam Khomeini. It is not yet totally understood, but we are on this way. So I think that Iran is becoming the greatest ally, maybe with North Korea, the only ally that came to help us in the first stage of the fight against Ukraine, where the situation was very hesitating. So I think we appreciate the Iranian friendship on the strategical level, and I think that the depth of the Iranian civilization is to be discovered properly. We are approaching each other and degree by degrees, and that is very good tendency. So if we consider what how our relations changed during last 20 years, it's a huge change. So, in the 20 years ago, we were the part of the West that considered that Iran is just peripheral, marginal, anti-Western, radical, extremist political system, and now we are admiring Iranian tradition. We appreciate its heroic refuse to be controlled by the West, and we start to take lessons from Iran, not only to cooperate on the pragmatic level.
So you believe that you should read again the letter that Imam Khomeini sent to Gorbachev and its deep philosophical meanings and messages?
The prophetic mind of Imam Khomeini was so spiritual that he reaches more than 40 years. So the Gorbachev wasn't person to read that, right person. Yeltsin, obviously not. And Putin is not yet metaphysically mature enough to read that. That is maybe reserved for the future political leadership of Russia. But finally, this great letter will be read in Russia on the due level.
And how do you perceive the Russian relation to Israel? Because many critique that and doesn't have a clear decision and a statement against Israel and its oppression and its illegal state and this. It has normal relations. So how do you analyze that?
I think that Russia is following that the traditional attitude. It is in favor of Gaza, in favor of Palestinian population, two-state solution. So Russia protested against the genocide of the Palestinians by Israelis, but Russia could not do what Islamic world should do. So if Islamic world shows that little decisiveness to defend, to save horribly suffering Palestinians, Russia could not do that instead of Islamic countries. So I think that morally we are on the side of Palestinian. We are not in the hostile.
Your opinion or the political opinion in your country?
No, that is political opinion of our country. It is not just my own personal opinion. We don't want to break relations with Israel by some pragmatical and strategical reasons, but now we are fighting those who support Israel. We are fighting directly against US, against EU. So the friends of Israel are our enemies, and that is clear. But we don't want to aggravate situation. We have our own war, and to say maybe we could say we wait when Islam starts the real war against Israel. If we could not to intervene now in the Gaza more than we do, because we are totally engaged in our own war, and we started the war, and Islam didn't start. The Islamic country declared, oh, if Israel would fight Palestinians, we will intervene, and nothing happens. So, and that is wrong attitude to blame Russia for the support or indecisiveness in the Palestine, because we are just waiting when Islam shows its own power. So we heard many serious and grave words, and nothing happens. So we could not fight two wars in spite of
Professor, what about the political thinkers and administrators and ministers and parties in Russia? Do they feel that they are influenced from such ideas that you're talking about, like spirituality and the sacredness and the deep philosophical ideas and the role of religion, the role of virtues? And so you're talking about a kind of politics that is related to ethics and virtues also, whereas modern politics are all about interests. So here, do you feel, no, there is a kind of political understanding in Russia that's coming close to what you aim for? Or no, it's totally secular, it's totally modern, and they are people who are working for their interests?
I would say that our people and our history is in line with what I'm thinking, what I'm saying, what I'm writing. The political elite during last 30 years was just the part of the global liberal capitalist West, and logically it didn't take seriously my ideas, but it influenced some part of this elite, patriotic elite, military men, deep states, the people from secret services. And now, in fighting with the West, obviously, my ideas are totally confirmed. I always predicted that there will be a fight with the West, and that this fight will be imposed on us by them, and that just happened. So they could discard my position, but it is illogical. And so I think that the influence of my ideas that was very important in the society, in the people, and in the some part of the establishment now is growing, and more people that were indifferent to such kind of thought about ethics, sacredness, tradition, civilization, Russian identity. Now that they begin to explore more that. So that is it is ongoing process, and that is the kind of rise of fourth political theory, of Eurasianism, of and multipolarity, for example. What I declared almost alone 10 years ago, now is official doctrine of Russian international politics. And multipolarity, I had dedicated to multipolarity many articles and the book, The Theory of Multipolar World. All that is accepted now. All that is the official strategy of Russia. So we have BRICS. So my ideas, they are realizing against the resistance of the liberals and the Westerners and the people moved only by interest. So I could not predict when the total victory of Eurasianism or fourth political theory or traditionalism will be achieved in Russia, but I hope and I believe in some moment it will be so obvious that nobody could doubt it.
In talking about the fourth political theory in this book, what's the main idea that you're trying to present as an alternative for society, as a summary? So what does the fourth political theory mean? Because you're not from an Islamic background and you're not talking about Plato, so what is it exactly?
So first of all, we need to reject idea of the modern Western subjects. In the political theory, there are three subjects, main subjects: individual in liberalism, class in socialism and Marxism and communism, and nation or race in the nationalism and the fascism. So we should reject all type of subject. We need to put instead something other, or people, Volk, Dasein, or being here, or sacredness, or tradition, or and better to put in the center the God. So we need to organize political society from the top down, from the God to state that should imitate the kingdom of the heaven, as we Christians we call that, and after that imitating, coming to down more and more, trying to preserve the relations with the God on every level. It is not easy, so we should be. We come to the matter. There are some many problematic elements.
We could talk about many details regarding the political system and how it will be shaped and formed, and in details, I mean. In the general idea, it seems nice, but then you have to talk about several details.
Well, first of all, we need, but it's interesting. The Western thought has penetrated so deep in us that we don't remark that. If we try to make kind of cleansing, intellectual cleansing of the Western ideas, so we will discover that in Iranian society, for example, there is a huge influence of the liberalism in the Karl Popper, the philosophy of modern day Shia Iranians. They still have this Popper tradition instead of Ahmad Fardit Heideggerianism. So and liberalism, you have many aspects in Iran of capitalism as well, not totally in the line with Islamic economy. So every society is so affected by the Western political ideas, for example, the political institutions, that before we could affirm something positive, we need to make some preparational work of de-Westernization, because this is garbzadegi in Persian, so vextification, so the kind of affection of the Western disease in our political thinking. So, and that affects everybody in the Islamic world and Russia. So we need to purify our political thought from the modern Western influence. And when we achieve that, we discover immediately that, for example, we had Christian political philosophy of orthodoxy based on empire and the position of an emperor. Emperor was not only the chief, the head of political organization, but a kind of bridge between the God and the heaven and the earth. So this is a kind of sacred monarchy with the spiritual Christian church very close to it. That was called the symphony theory. And if we introduce the symphony theory based on the alliance between patriarch and the king, or better say to Basileus, the emperor, we should develop the situation from the top to the down. So without any kind of from the down to the top. So that should be empire, hierarchy, strategical, and on the basic level, we should not deal with the individuals. We should deal with communities, traditional communities, with different traditions, and this cultural multiplicity and multipolarity should be accepted on the level of the basic level. So communities, the people living by their own traditions inside of strategic unity. That is for us. For Iran, I think the best will be a kind to revolutionary revision of the communist idea in order to put every elements of the liberal Western influence. That was huge, to say the truth. And the same, for example, for Sunni. They should be very careful to...
For our Gulf countries, do you feel that we have opportunities and that we have to use wisely in order to overcome this very strong relation to the West and the United States and the United Kingdom, that we have opportunities that we have to use to become independent a bit economically or politically or culturally, and how we can use them wisely, because our countries in a way or another are linked to the West?
To be linked to the West is one thing, and to let the political thought of the West enter your society is the other thing. You can organize interface to deal with the other world, but you should stay free from the Western influence that destroy and undermine your identity. You need to concentrate to de-Westernize more and more your society, as we should do with ourselves in the Russia.
Thank you very much, Professor, for being with us. Our time finished, and let me finalize this interesting interview with a final question. So, the main negative point that you find in the Western society or in the capitalist lifestyle that we are facing nowadays, or what is it? Or another idea that you'd like to add to our interview today that you feel important, please do.
So first of all, that was the shift from the interiority to the exteriority in the beginning of the Enlightenment. So that was the kind of vision of the nature, of the physics, of the matter, of the universe as independent from human spirit, human mind. That was the main failure, main mistake, and that was growing and growing and growing, not only in the physics, affirming that the things exist by themselves, but as well projecting the same attitude to the society that should be created from the down to the top. So that was atomism, atomistic and mechanical materialism that affected science, ideology, culture, and individualism, and that was the way, the road to the hell. And that is why we need to restore, first of all, to, for example, to Aristotelian physics, not Newtonian. We need to return to the hierarchical society, kingdoms, and the church, with the great influence of the church, and not secularism. We should return the traditional moral and ethics against individualistic nihilism. So we need to improve. We should reject all the experience of the modern West, and we should, first of all, I think we should reject capitalism as the ideology based on the growth of the material comfort. That is wrong. That is illusion. That is not rich. That is something that destroy and exploit the people. And I think that we need to kill capitalism. So capitalism should be totally rejected if we want to live. So we need to reject all the Western modern experience. Science of the modern West is wrong because it's based on the wrong premises or wrong principles. Political theory is wrong. Cultural is wrong. Economy is wrong. Political system, institution are wrong. So we need to put them because they are based on the principle that matter, exterior things exist before the human consciousness, because they are atheistic, materialistic, and externalist. I am calling that externalism. So we need first of all refuse externalism and return to internalism. So first of all, God, soul, immortality of the soul, eternity, resurrection, and the coming of the man of the time, the final manifestation of the Savior who will restore the interiority against the devil's exteriority. That is my vision.
Thank you very much for your time and for this opportunity, Professor Alexander Dugin from Russia.
Best wishes.